Hello, my wonderful, wonderful people, and welcome back. I promised you a video in which I would explain a few things and show you a few things regarding my travels. And now that I am back home, there's no problem in doing so. I have enough time. So here's the video. And before I start, if there's anything missing, if you have any more questions, you are free to leave them in the comments down below and I will answer them. So let's get started. I have made a few notes, so hopefully I won't forget anything. The first thing I want to make sure you are thinking about when you are traveling, whether it is for just a short period of time, a slightly longer period of time, or as I did for a very long time, make sure you have travel insurance. Depending on your normal insurance, a lot of times there's like a certain amount of days included, even when you travel farther. So check that one first. If it isn't, and a lot of the times like there's around about 30 days like included if you're lucky, and depending on which countries you go to, there might be countries where they say no, we don't include that, please get a travel insurance. If you're not, please get a travel insurance. No, I did not need it while I was gone. I did not need to go to a doctor. If you followed my whole journey, I was really sick twice. Once I had a stomach bug, which probably was because I ate too spicy food in Thailand, and it lasted one day, and I had everything with me that I needed for that one day. And the second time was when I had my cold in Korea during the last few days. So I did not need to go to a hospital or a doctor. But you never know. And because you never know, and because it can get quite expensive, please make sure you have some kind of insurance. Also, in some cases, when you want to have like your visa, you have to at least do the little tick that you are insured. So, yeah. If you are German, and I think in some parts of Europe overall, my tip is look into the ADAC. For me, it was the cheapest option for this long time, because if you're going away for a long time, you will normally have to pay the normal rates for insurance even if you get a travel insurance. So you will have to pay monthly, and you will have to pay around, let's say, 200 euros. With the ADAC, I was lucky enough to just pay once and to just pay slightly over 700 euros overall for 1 year. And the good thing about the ADAC is if you're really, really, really sick, they have a lot of ways to get you out of any country. And they will get you out of the country because it's cheaper for them to get you out of the country and back here than it is for them to pay whatever the country will take. Also, in some cases, they might not trust the country you are in, so they want you to get out. So yeah, that's something that is really, really important and you really, really should think about. With that comes the next big thing, and that's finances. Before I left the country, I made a spreadsheet with all the money I got, so all my savings, which was not a small amount. I have to tell you this, but please remember, I am over 30 years old. I have worked during COVID and didn't do a lot of spending. And I am lucky enough to have parents that when I was little, used a little bit of money and put it away, and I had to like spend a tiny amount of money over a few years to put into this savings account, which is a special savings account something like that, no longer exists, which made sure that in the end I not only had the money that I put into that savings account, but the interest rate was really, really good. So I got that as well. So overall, I had a little bit over 50,000 euros in savings for this trip. That's what I just want you to realize. Okay? Good. So before I left, I started a spreadsheet. I just used a spreadsheet that Excel gave me anyways. I might include some like pictures or something. We'll see. So I had one spreadsheet for like all the costs. And I started to plan everything. So I had things like this much money I want to spend per month on food and on shopping. Shopping might include things like tiny souvenirs, or if I needed to buy something for the apartment I was staying in, or shopping. So one of the lines was just the 12 month and then as much money as I wanted to spend per month on food or shopping. Then I decided how much I wanted to spend on accommodations and on travel per each country and each travel. For example, I knew I wanted to take the bus from Thailand to Cambodia, and in my planning, I planned it more expensive than it was in the end. So that's my big tip. Don't plan with exactly what you want to spend or exactly what you think you will spend, but do it a little bit higher. So every time I have finished a country, I could go, okay, instead of spending 1,000 euros on traveling costs, I only spent 500. So I suddenly had 500 euros more. In a way, you are over planning instead of planning exactly. In that way, you will always have a little bit of money left. That's my tip. You don't need to do that if you don't feel comfortable, but that's what I did. So yeah. I also included extra costs. So one of the costs I had were 10,000 euros put aside in case I would go to the doctors or to the hospital. That might seem a lot, but that was the exact amount of money my dad gave me for this trip. So he was kind enough to give me some money, and I decided instead of spending it, instead of putting it into the planning itself, I put it away because this is my safety money should something happen. Because even though I am insured, sometimes in countries you will have to pay first and get the money back later. So that's really, really important to know. A lot of times you will have to pay first and it will take some time for you to get the money back. You will probably get the money back because you will have all of these beautiful letters from hospitals, from doctors, whatever, that tell your insurance company that you were sick, but you might have to pay at front, in front, beforehand. You know what I mean. So that was one big cost factor that I put aside. Also, I had factors put aside for this apartment, like if there was something I had to pay more of, I would have money put aside for that, even though I had a tenant during that time, and then I would talk to her and we would talk about it. I just wanted to make sure I had something like that put aside, because I would have to pay it first before we could talk about it, because everything still ran through me, because that was easier. And it's a lot easier now that I'm back, because now I don't have to call anyone and tell them, hey, I'm back. Now I want to pay again. Now I want to be your customer again, because I always was the customer. I was in charge of all of these things. So just to make sure, I had money for that put aside. And I had more money put aside for each visa I had to get. And so anything you can think of that might occur during your time away, I made a small bullet point and put money in it, just in case. Because you never know. So I had the overall spreadsheet, and then I had my monthly spreadsheets because, as I said at the beginning, I put aside a certain amount of money that went into things I could spend monthly. So this money was like for each month I had an extra spreadsheet how much I could spend, and I kept track of everything I spent. And even if it, for example, if you take out money, you just have like the bullet point, took out money. And that's it. You don't have to like write down what you spent with the cash, but I just had like the bullet point, took out money. So because that's what would have left the amount of money I could spend. Also, there were certain things that still had to be paid by me and that are still being paid because it's my monthly things like Netflix and my mobile phone bill, which I cut down. So I went to my provider and I told them, hey, I'm going to leave for a year, but I want to keep my number and I need my number for like SMS notifications, for pins and push notification and things like that. So I need my number and I need it to work, but I don't need any data while I'm gone, because also a bullet point you will need, I got SIMs everywhere I went. So because my phone can take 2 SIM cards, I always went and got a local SIM to be able to use the internet while I'm walking around. Especially important because I used Google Maps and similar things to find my way. So yeah, so like the monthly costs I still had that had nothing to do with the apartment and that was not covered by my tenant, I still had to keep track of because that money I'd still lose. And because I wasn't working, because everywhere I went on a traveling visa, and you're not allowed to work when you're on a traveling visa. Also, all of this is a lot of fun, but it doesn't make money right now. Because of that, I also spend around 97 euros each month that went into my pension fund. Otherwise, I would not have paid anything into the pension fund while being away. And here in Germany, you are able to spend money and give money to the pension fund, so you might still get more money out of it when you ever are able to retire. Which, let's not think about retiring, but just in case, I did that as well. So yeah, so you have monthly costs that you can track, and you have the overall budgeting that I tracked. So I already mentioned it. I had to get some visa while I was traveling. The German passport is quite strong, which means in a lot of cases you won't need a specific visa to enter a country. With countries like Korea, Japan, and Thailand, most of the times a traveling visa or a tourist visa is enough. For Thailand, I needed a specific one because once you want to stay longer than, I think, 30 days, you will need a visa. For Japan and Korea, you can stay on 90 days and then you have to leave. So 90 days, I think, is really good. So yeah. If you want to stay longer than 90 days, you will need something else than a traveling or a tourist visa. Then you will need to look into anything else anyway. For Cambodia and Vietnam, I had to get visa. And Taiwan as well. Taiwan is similar to Korea and Japan. So no like real visa is necessary, at least with a German passport. So you will have to look into each country if you need a visa, if you don't need a visa. And if you do, please make sure you get it in time. A lot of times for me, 1 week ahead was more than enough, but you never know. And because you can tell them when you will arrive, so you know like the time frame when it is activated, you should make sure it is activated then. I have seen tweets, I have seen posts about people who wanted to go somewhere, I think for example Vietnam, and they didn't get the visa like in time because they wanted to get it 2 days before. And that's a bit short notice. A lot of them I could get in like 3 days, sometimes it was only 2 days, but you never know. And if there's a holiday in between, then no one will look at it. So please, 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 please inform yourself beforehand if you need a visa, depending on how long you stay. And if you do, make sure you know how much time you need. I couldn't get all of them before I traveled because sometimes you will have to send a picture of your passport, and you might need to send them a picture of like the last page where all the stamps are. That one had to be like at that time. So I couldn't get them all here when I was in Germany because the stamps for Thailand might have been missing when I wanted to get the visa for Cambodia. But even though that was one of the more interesting parts of the travel, in the end it was always easy to get. But again, I do have a strong passport. I mostly don't have any problems going anywhere with my German passport. So yeah. Now, traveling in itself. I did a lot of traveling and I used a lot of different transportation methods. The easiest one was, without a question, always taking a flight. Flying in Southeast Asia most of the times is not that expensive. So we're talking about similar prices than when we travel here in Europe. Because you have to remember that traveling there also means people there want to travel. It's similar than when Europeans want to travel somewhere. So there will be a lot of Southeast Asian tourists wherever you go. And the planes are tourist planes. It's not only locals. Even when you're in the country, even when you take the shorter trips, it might be a mix between tourists and locals. So the most expensive flight always is to get there. You have to get there somewhere, somehow. But once you're there, it can depend. It depends on to which country you're flying and from where you are flying, and of course, which airline you are using. Some of the cheapest flights I had, which was still wonderful, were the ones inside of Vietnam. So I paid around 50 euros for my flight from one part of the country to another. I was able to have a carry-on. I was able to have baggage I could give them, and that was like boarded. So I was good. So if you want to go the known route, and if you feel more comfortable somewhere where you know that people are used to tourists, take the plane. Now, the more interesting part was definitely taking the bus. I took a bus from Thailand to Cambodia, then in Cambodia, and from Cambodia to Vietnam. Now, these bus tours are also mostly made for tourists, at least the ones from like in between countries. They were not that expensive. They were definitely cheaper than taking a plane, but they also took a freaking long time. And yeah, I don't know if I want to. It is fun, it is an experience, but yeah. And I think the most exciting part about this whole journey is crossing a border in a train in a completely different country. It works similar to when you're at an airport, but it also kind of doesn't. So nothing happened, everything went well. Just remember that because it's not an airport, because it is a land border, just remember, because it's not an airport, because it's a land border, and it works slightly different, and people who are using these kind of borders might be different people than when it comes to flying. The experience is a bit different, and you might have to pay something that you normally wouldn't, but we're talking about small amounts. We're not talking about hundreds of dollars, we're talking about $10, $20 if it comes to that. So for me, when I came from Thailand to Cambodia, I had everything with me. I did not need to buy another visa while crossing the border, but I think I had to pay them like a tiny bit of a processing fee. I think, I don't remember, it's been quite some time, and if I had to, it was like $10, $20 maybe, but I'm not sure. It might have also been just the visa itself that I had to pay for, and that was it. So yeah, just remember that. Otherwise, the border crossing was easy and there were no problems. If you want to see more of that, just go back and watch the vlog where I did that. Yeah. So the camera needed a little bit of time to cool down again. She got a little bit hot, so we took a little break, and now the light has changed, so I changed my position. I think we stopped at the transportation and the bus, and I think I've said everything about taking the bus I needed to. I hope so. So the last thing I did, or the last kind of transportation I took, was taking trains in certain countries. Now, my train experiences were all good, but I only took the trains in Taiwan, in Japan, and in Korea, and I'm pretty sure those are like the high-class train you can take. So yeah, nothing to complain about here, but I would have been surprised, would have been different. Now, once you've arrived, you will need an accommodation. And I myself picked a lot of Airbnbs and some homestays and some hotels. So if you want to have freedom and you want to cook by yourself, but you might also want to clean a little bit, because if you book an Airbnb, there probably won't be a cleaning service while you are there, then book an Airbnb. I had no problem. Well, that's not quite right. I had one problem, but that problem was before I went to that Airbnb, because the host told me that the people who were living in there right now would want to stay, so I had to cancel that Airbnb and book another one. That was not good, but well, who cares? Otherwise, I never really had a problem. All of my Airbnbs were clean, were mostly conveniently located, so yeah, I enjoyed it, but I also needed a place to cook a lot of the times, so that helped. The one Airbnb in Hanoi was a bit... I did not read exactly enough. The place itself was cool, was pretty, it was located great, but it did not have a kitchen and it did not have a washing machine. So yeah, but I found ways around it. I still got food to eat, and at one point I simply told my host if they could help me how I could like wash my clothes, and they just got someone to pick it up, washed it, brought it back, and it was really cheap, so it was totally fine. If you want someone who takes care of you while you're staying somewhere, find a homestay or a smaller hotel. In Hoi An, I was in a homestay. They had 2 rooms that were rented out, and otherwise you were kind of living with the family. You did not really see them. It was not like you shared any rooms, but they were living right next to the rooms you could rent. And they were the ones that made you breakfast, and they made sure I had a driver, they made sure I had food, they made sure of everything. So I felt really, really taken care of. And similarly, when I was in Siem Reap, I was in a smaller hotel, and the hotel itself was beautiful, the rooms were clean, the pool was great, but because it was a small hotel with just a few people of staff, the hostess there made sure I had everything. I had a driver, I had a tuk-tuk driver to Angkor Wat. Anything I wanted to do, she made sure that I could do it. So yeah, if you want that kind of experience, try to find something smaller maybe. If you just want to have the chance to ask someone for help and you want to have a room that's cleaned regularly and things like that, a hotel. So there's kind of 3 ways you can go. Of course, there's also always hostels if you don't mind sharing, but I think a hostel is similar to a hotel. The only difference is if you have a room by yourself or if you have to share it. So yeah, that's, I think, all I could say about the accommodations. Maybe one more thing to remember when you want to have an Airbnb in Thailand, you will have to stay longer than 30 days. Because most apartment complexes don't allow for short-term lease, and they don't want to have like changing people all the time. So you could get into trouble if they find out that someone rented the apartment to you for less than 30 days. If you're there for longer than 30 days, they might not care. But yeah, you have to be careful when it comes to Thailand and Airbnbs. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is my luggage. Because I was traveling for a year, I had my big backpack, which is very helpful. Yes, it sucks because you have to carry 15 to 20 kilos on your back. That's what I had to do because I put all of my clothes into vacuum bags, which meant I could take more than you typically can. But, well, okay. But it just helps with a lot of things, especially if you are somewhere where the streets are not even, or if you have to walk through tiny streets or things like that. Having a backpack is just easier. And if you're not traveling for a year, you might even need less clothes and stuff than I did. But I can tell you, I needed a carry-on luggage and not a second backpack. So at the start, I had 2 backpacks, one on the back, one on the front. It really didn't work out for me. That was too much, especially with the heavy backpack on my back. So once you have your carry-on and that's full with things and also gets kind of heavy, it's better to have like a tiny suitcase. So when I was in Seoul the first time, I bought a tiny carry-on suitcase, and that was perfect, especially since all of my technology had to go in there all the time. So you had the laptop, you had a bunch of cables, you had a bunch of chargers, you had the switch, anything. So you have a lot of stuff, and it gets kind of heavy. So it's easier if that's a small suitcase that you can just drag behind you. And smaller suitcases are fine anywhere you go, because it's not that heavy and it's easier to maneuver than having a big suitcase that weighs like 20 to 30 kilos. Of course, on my flight back, I bought a second big suitcase because I bought a lot of things and I wanted to get all of them home. So yeah, but that was my problem, and that was my shopping problem. That should not concern you. If you only go to one country and you know you will do a lot of shopping, either go with a slightly less full suitcase. If you know how much you can bring back, you can always send some things home in a package, because sending a package is not that complicated. When it comes to what to pack, that depends on you, whatever you need. But the one thing I would tell you to pack, and where I would be really like thorough in what you're taking, is your medicine. So there shouldn't be a problem with getting ibuprofen anywhere, and something like normal cold medicine, nothing too strong, like anything that you can get over the counter. That should not be the problem. The problem might be with special pain medication and things like that. But please remember, there's certain medications that might get you into trouble when you enter a country. Things like ADHD medication, certain mental health medications like antidepressants. You should read up beforehand if you're allowed to take them, or if you need like a written letter from your doctor that tells the border patrol that you're allowed to take it. So yeah, those things are really important to look up, because each country has different rules on what kind of medication they allow and what kind of medication they don't allow. And I'm not talking about like the normal over-the-counter pain medication. For example, I have special pain medication for period cramps, but it's like so low that no one would care. It's just kind of a special ingredient. It's a little bit different than ibuprofen or paracetamol, but still it's nothing that a doctor would give you, and it's not that strong, so no other country cares. But with antidepressants, or as I said, with anything that has to do with ADHD, you really have to be careful, because in certain countries these are not allowed, and they're not allowed for normal people to get from a doctor. So yeah, read up on it, find out what the rules are, find out what you need to be allowed to bring them in, just in case. Probably no one will ask you, probably no one will find out if you just have like your normal amount. And most of the times, if it's the normal amount for that period of time that you're on your vacation, you just need like a letter from your doctor and it should be fine. But because those things can be drugs in those countries, please make sure to find out whatever you have to do to get them in without getting into trouble. And last but not least, when it comes to medication or things like that, don't bring anything against mosquitoes. The countries will have the best stuff. Because that's what they have to deal with anyway. So yeah, you don't need to bring anything like any sprays or something like that. Just get it there. So the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that I have traveled through a lot of different countries, and a lot of people told me, you are so brave to do that. Now, in a way, yes, I don't want to talk this fact down, because I did most of my travels by myself. Yeah, in a way, that's brave. But also, I really felt safe in all of these countries. All of the people, or most of the people, were really kind, really welcoming. And in comparison to planning a trip to some European countries, you don't have to worry that much. Yes, you always should be careful. And I'm someone who probably won't go out after 10 p.m. I won't go anywhere where there's like a certain crowds, because that's not my cup of tea. It's not that I'm scared, and it's just I don't do that. I prefer going out earlier and exploring during the day, and then at night being home reading and going to bed early. So yeah, and you will find out even in the day where you can go and where you shouldn't go. It's the same anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in a South Asian country or in Europe or wherever you are. There's always certain areas where you shouldn't go at night, where you should be more careful at night. You have to be careful, yes. But in these countries, during the day, I always felt safe. And even in the nighttime, like before 11 p.m., I always felt safe, because a lot of people go out at night. It gets darker earlier than it does here in Germany, because we have like this big difference between summer and winter, where you have like long days and short days. And over there, a lot of times all the days are quite similar. So around 8 p.m. it gets dark, or 9, and here you might have like sunlight at 10 if you're not lucky. But because it gets dark, it does not get But just because it gets dark, it does not get dangerous, because a lot of times, similar to here, people stop working at between 7 and 8. So that's the time when they go out. That's when they start walking around lakes, or when they start walking near the Hangang and things like that. So it's not unsafe, because there's a lot of families, there's a lot of people. It's not like you're in a place where there's a lot of drunk people. It's just normal people being out in the dark, because it gets dark earlier than it does here. And that's it. That's all the notes I wrote down. And I hope I didn't forget anything. If you have any questions about anything I just said, or anything else that I might be able to answer, leave it in the comments below, and I will get back to you and try to answer as good as possible. Don't forget, all of this is my experience, it's my travels, you will have a different experience probably, and you will meet different people, you will see different things, even though you might take a similar route. So everything is subjective. This whole thing is. But I still hope that some of the things I did, some of the tips I had, are helpful for you, and you might like take something out of it. Now we're getting on familiar ground for me. I'm back in Germany, I'm back in Hamburg, I'm somewhere where I've been for quite some time, but I still want to do travel things. So now you will get tips and tricks about Germany. Things that I'll try to show you, things that might surprise you, or explain things to you that you might not know, that for me are like totally normal. For example, today I realized that for crossing the street, there are certain things you should know that will be helpful. For example, when do you press the button? Which buttons do you press? And why do almost all Germans always press the button for blind people? It just makes you realize when you have to cross. And it's totally fine. You can do that. No one will look at you funny. If you're not sure whether or not you need to press a button, just press it. There's no helpful voice that will suddenly speak to you like in Korea, or anything like that. It just starts beeping at you and that's it. So just press the button. But I will come to that when I come to tips and tricks for Germany. So already, if you have questions about Germany or about Hamburg in particular, also leave them down below and I will try to weave them into the videos. Now, other than that, I hope you enjoyed this very, very long and very, very rambly vlog. And I will see you in the next one, which will be about Hamburg and no longer about Southeast Asia. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and if you haven't yet, subscribe, because as I told you, I will show you more. And other than that, that's it for this one. This one was really long and the poor camera went hot a few times, so I'll have to stop now. And I think I need to make dinner. So see you in the next one. Bye!